Nathan Clark adjusted his tactical scanner for the 100th time that shift, while another delayed refugee convoy remained stranded at Checkpoint 17 due to administrative processing requirements that seemed designed by people who'd never actually met refugees or understood what emergency evacuation meant in practical terms. The patrol zone stretched across bombed-out settlements that once represented peaceful cooperation between humans and the Vraxian Dominion, now serving as grim monuments to how quickly diplomatic relationships could deteriorate into warfare that left civilian populations trapped between opposing forces. "Third consecutive delay this week," he muttered to his patrol partner, while his scanner cheerfully reported optimal security conditions in territory where families lived in temporary shelters that had become permanent homes due to evacuation procedures that somehow never quite functioned as designed. The convoy's been waiting 6 hours for clearance that should take 6 minutes. Captain Vera Morstan moved through the checkpoint with the fluid precision that made Vraxian warriors look like they were performing combat ballet in zero gravity, her crystalline armor reflecting starlight in patterns that seemed almost deliberate. Her elongated ears tracked conversations across vast distances, while her tactical awareness monitored threats that Nathan's human senses couldn't detect, creating a partnership that had kept their joint patrols safer than either species achieved independently. "The administrative delays," she observed with the clinical detachment that made Vraxian analysis sound like expensive diagnostic equipment, "follow patterns that suggest systematic obstruction rather than bureaucratic incompetence. Each convoy experiences identical processing failures that generate identical emergency service requirements." Nathan's assignment involved monitoring ceasefire violations while facilitating humanitarian corridor access, work that required maintaining neutrality while witnessing systematic violations of agreements that both governments claimed to support, but secretly undermined through actions designed to appear like enemy provocations. 3 weeks of consecutive patrol duty had left him emotionally exhausted from watching preventable suffering continue, while officials argued about procedures that served no purpose except generating revenue for emergency service providers. The border zone's monitoring stations hummed with equipment designed to detect ceasefire violations, though Nathan had begun suspecting that certain violations were deliberately created to justify ongoing monitoring contracts rather than prevented through effective peacekeeping. His diplomatic training had prepared him for managing tensions between hostile parties, not for identifying when those parties were secretly cooperating to maintain profitable instability. Convoy 77 requesting emergency medical assistance. His communication system announced with mechanical precision that couldn't quite mask the underlying desperation of families whose children were getting sick in camps that were supposed to be temporary waypoints. Estimated arrival time for medical support, 14 hours. 14 hours for emergency medical response, Nathan said quietly, watching Captain Vera process tactical data that probably included information he didn't have clearance to access. "In territory where we maintain permanent medical facilities specifically for refugee assistance, there's no logistical reason for that delay." Through her tactical display, Captain Vera monitored patterns that extended beyond their immediate patrol area, tracking resource allocation and transportation schedules with military precision that revealed systematic inefficiencies designed to maximize dependency on emergency services, rather than facilitate independent refugee movement toward permanent settlements. The martial consort traditions of Vraxian culture remained largely mysterious to human diplomatic training, though Nathan understood that their warrior society placed enormous significance on bonds forged during shared danger. Their partnership had evolved beyond simple patrol cooperation into something approaching mutual respect, with each species' strengths compensating for the other's limitations in ways that made their joint missions more effective than purely human or Vraxian operations. "Captain," Nathan said carefully, "hypothetically speaking, what would happen if someone with sufficient authority decided to bypass these administrative delays and authorize direct evacuation to permanent settlements? Could the system handle that kind of efficiency?" Her crystalline features shifted in patterns that suggested calculation mixed with something approaching hope. The evacuation corridors possess unused capacity that could process current refugee populations within 72 hours if administrative obstacles were removed. The infrastructure exists, only authorization prevents implementation. Nathan felt the weight of accumulated frustration settling around him, like gravity, remembering its most depressing responsibilities. Thousands of families waited in camps that could be emptied within days if officials prioritized humanitarian welfare over contractor profits that required maintaining manageable crisis levels. Emergency services revenue, he realized aloud, depends on continued emergency situations. Solved refugee problems eliminate the need for emergency refugee services. Successful evacuations reduce demand for evacuation assistance. The tactical display showed another convoy approaching Checkpoint 19, where it would encounter identical processing delays that generated identical emergency service requirements, continuing patterns that had persisted for months while families remained separated and children grew up in temporary facilities that were becoming their only homes. Nathan watched Captain Vera monitor communications that revealed coordination between supposed enemies, tracking resource movements that suggested both sides were cooperating to maintain profitable instability rather than achieve lasting peace. The ceasefire wasn't preventing war. It was managing conflict at levels that maximized contractor revenue while minimizing public attention to systematic exploitation. In a moment of complete emotional exhaustion, watching another family separation that served no purpose except generating administrative fees, Nathan whispered what he believed was private despair to the cosmos. "I wish I could marry her and end all this suffering." The words carried across Vraxian hearing ranges that exceeded human vocal expectations, while ancient cultural protocols that Nathan had never studied began recognizing patterns in his desperate expression that would transform routine patrol duty into the most politically significant partnership in recent diplomatic history. Captain Vera's response would either remain private acknowledgement between patrol partners or become the foundation for changes that could reshape how civilizations approached peace maintenance when contractors weren't allowed to profit from systematic conflict preservation. Captain Vera Morstan turned toward Nathan with crystalline features that shifted through surprise, calculation, and something approaching determined resolve, before responding with ceremonial precision that transformed his whispered desperation into cosmic significance. "My answer is yes, Nathan Clark of the Human Territories, and by ancient law, the martial consort right is hereby invoked between us." The patrol zone's monitoring systems erupted in digital celebration as ancient Vraxian protocols activated with enthusiasm that seemed wildly inappropriate for routine ceasefire maintenance performed in territory where both sides were supposed to be maintaining careful neutrality. Nathan's tactical display transformed into a cascade of notifications announcing martial consort rights and evacuation corridor authority, with access levels that definitely exceeded his field negotiator certification. Martial consort, what now? Nathan managed, his diplomatic training failing to provide protocols for accidentally proposing to alien warriors through expressions of frustrated idealism about ending systematic refugee exploitation. The partnership has been properly witnessed by monitoring systems that recognize sincere bonds forged during shared danger. Captain Vera explained with satisfaction that couldn't quite mask the underlying strategic calculation in her expression. Ancient Vraxian, law creates formal authority sharing between martial partners, granting combined access to evacuation systems and sealed armistice records. Nathan's security clearance expanded instantly to include refugee management databases that revealed systematic manipulation of evacuation assistance, while Captain Vera gained access to human intelligence networks showing coordinated delays designed to maintain dependency on expensive emergency services. Through their suddenly established connection, information flowed like tactical data synchronizing between linked command systems. The evacuation delays, she observed as data streamed across their shared awareness, are not due to logistical challenges. Director Walsh has been coordinating with our Commander Kexvoth to maintain what they term optimal tension protocols for maximum emergency service profitability. The financial records painted a picture of systematic exploitation that treated refugee suffering as renewable resources for emergency intervention contracts. Evacuation corridors were deliberately bottlenecked to create crisis situations, while transportation schedules were manipulated to force dependence on specific contractors controlled by the conspiracy. Through their bond, Nathan experienced Vraxian tactical processing that made human diplomatic analysis seem like crude approximations of more sophisticated strategic instruments. Captain Vera discovered that human negotiation thinking operated through emotional approaches that her warrior training had never considered relevant to military planning, but which proved remarkably effective at identifying systematic corruption. Commander Kexvoth's security company, Nathan realized through their shared investigation, operates on renewable crisis principles. His contracts depend on continued evacuation problems because solved refugee situations would eliminate ongoing revenue streams and reduce demand for emergency military services. The Marshall Consort Right created mental intimacy that made sharing thoughts feel as natural as sharing tactical awareness, though Nathan's human tendency toward emotional problem-solving seemed to fascinate someone whose warrior education had emphasized strategic analysis over intuitive understanding of systematic exploitation. Evidence accumulated revealing that ceasefire violations had been carefully orchestrated to maximize profits for emergency service providers. Border zone instability wasn't accidental diplomatic failure, but calculated business opportunity, with both species' civilian welfare sacrificed for contractor profits that measured success in quarterly revenue reports rather than lives protected. Director Walsh's Humanitarian Logistics Corporation, Captain Vera observed through their connection, coordinates with Vraxian security companies to create artificial crisis cycles. Evacuation failures generate intervention contracts, while refugee dependency justifies expensive emergency management services that somehow never quite solve underlying problems. Her acceptance of Nathan's whispered proposal hadn't been random response to human desperation, but calculated recognition that his sincere desire to end suffering aligned with Vraxian warrior codes that prioritize civilian protection over political convenience. The Marshall Consort tradition was designed to honor partnerships forged during shared danger, creating bonds that extended beyond individual welfare into realms of governmental authority. The consort protection, she explained quietly, creates ceremonial immunity that prevents direct action against us while we investigate. Ancient Vraxian law recognizes martial bonds as creating sacred obligation to complete whatever mission initiated the partnership, regardless of political pressure to abandon civilian welfare for contractor convenience. Their shared awareness revealed suspicious coordination between human emergency contractors and Vraxian logistics companies, all carefully structured to benefit from continued evacuation problems. Refugee delays weren't random administrative failures, but calculated profit optimization, with civilian safety measured against quarterly earnings rather than basic humanitarian responsibility. Nathan's achievement notifications had progressed to Level 1, accidentally bonded to alien warrior, with helpful cultural notes about consort customs that included shared combat authority and permanent integration into military command structures that made human diplomatic partnerships seem remarkably limited by comparison. External surveillance increased as their partnership attracted attention from conspiracy beneficiaries, who seemed remarkably well informed about activities in supposedly neutral patrol territory. Both human and Vraxian forces began positioning themselves with movements that suggested coordinated planning between supposed ceasefire competitors. The formalization deadline, Captain Vera noted with growing urgency, approaches at dawn through channels that affect emergency service contracts. If we fail to publicly confirm our bond before sunrise, various factions will move to eliminate evidence and witnesses, who threaten arrangements built on systematic refugee exploitation. The weight of cosmic decision settled around them like gravity, remembering its most humanitarian responsibilities. While thousands of refugee families waited for evacuation that could happen within days, if officials prioritized civilian welfare over contractor profits that required maintaining manageable crisis levels indefinitely. The Marshall Consort Rights Integration Protocols transformed Nathan and Captain Vera's connection into something resembling a two-person humanitarian intelligence agency specializing in ceasefire corruption, complete with shared consciousness that made processing exploitation data feel like collaborative analysis between someone who understood how peace negotiations were supposed to protect civilians and someone who understood how military systems were designed to maintain security, but had been perverted into profit generation mechanisms. Their combined awareness flowed like synchronized tactical systems, allowing them to examine evidence with human diplomatic precision and Vraxian military authority. Director Walsh's humanitarian logistics protocols, Captain Vera observed through their link, demonstrate remarkable creativity in crisis engineering. I'm reviewing evacuation schedules that claim efficiency improvements while actually documenting delay procedures designed to create refugee problems requiring premium emergency intervention services. Nathan felt their awareness merging in ways that made distinguishing between his thoughts and hers an increasingly academic exercise. The evidence revealed systematic coordination that extended far beyond simple war profiteering. Evacuation corridors had been deliberately sabotaged through routing complications that forced refugees into specific processing centers. Transportation schedules had been manipulated to create overcrowding that justified emergency expansion contracts. And even basic humanitarian supplies had been controlled through artificial scarcities that increased suffering while maximizing dependency on expensive corporate services. Through Captain Vera's military access, Nathan discovered hidden communication networks, revealing that ceasefire maintenance had been systematically corrupted whenever genuine peace threatened to eliminate justification for emergency interventions. The border instability wasn't accidental diplomatic failure, but carefully maintained business opportunity, with both species' civilian welfare sacrificed for contractor profits. Commander Kexvoth's security protocols, Nathan realized through their shared investigation, operate on manufactured threat principles. His company creates evacuation problems through deliberate sabotage, then charges premium rates for emergency solutions to crises they systematically cause while preventing sustainable peace that would eliminate ongoing security contracts. The danger escalated as their investigation attracted attention from multiple conspiracy beneficiaries. Human hardliner forces had begun subtle repositioning around patrol areas, while Vraxian extremist units moved with careful precision that suggested preparation for operations designed to eliminate inconvenient witnesses before ceasefire oversight could threaten profitable status quo arrangements built on systematic peace sabotage. Their cultural exchange continued as they navigated the intimate requirements of shared martial consciousness during conspiracy investigation. Nathan discovered that Vraxian problem-solving involved tactical analysis that his human emotional instincts seemed to disrupt, while Captain Vera learned that human diplomatic approaches operated through intuitive pattern recognition that identified systematic exploitation. Her military training would classify as separate security issues, requiring different command structures to handle individually. Your thought patterns, she noted with scientific fascination, create solution pathways that ignore traditional military hierarchies, but somehow reach effective humanitarian conclusions. The cognitive approach suggests your species developed diplomatic intelligence through direct interaction with suffering populations, rather than theoretical conflict frameworks designed to prevent problems. Through their bond, Nathan experienced Vraxian military processing that made human bureaucracy seem like crude approximations of more sophisticated tactical instruments. Captain Vera discovered that human emotional thinking operated through empathy recognition that identified systematic cruelty. Her warrior education would approach through strategic channels that somehow never quite resolved underlying humanitarian issues. The conspiracy evidence revealed coordination that reached beyond simple profit motive into deliberate peace manipulation, designed to maintain what Walsh and Kexvoth called sustainable conflict management. Ceasefire protocols had been designed to fail just enough to justify ongoing intervention contracts, while success rates remained high enough to prevent complete war that would expose their systematic exploitation of refugee populations. The artificial evacuation failures, Captain Vera explained through their connection, weren't accidental administrative breakdowns. Refugee transportation was coordinated to create bottlenecks that increased emergency response requirements, while generating revenue for evacuation services, security assistance, and extended humanitarian management contracts that somehow never quite established permanent settlements. External surveillance increased as both human and Vraxian forces prepared for dawn deadline operations. Through their shared awareness, they tracked movement patterns that suggested coordinated planning between supposed ceasefire competitors, proving the conspiracy reached operational levels of both military services that were supposed to protect civilian populations. The patrol zone's humanitarian activity proceeded around them with mechanical efficiency that couldn't quite mask systematic sabotage designed to maintain profitable refugee dependency. Evacuation processing had been complicated unnecessarily. Security clearance requirements had been multiplied beyond practical necessity, and transportation coordination had been implemented in ways that created delays rather than facilitating movement toward permanent resettlement solutions. The Martial Consort protection, Captain Vera explained quietly, creates ceremonial immunity that prevents direct action against us while we investigate. But formalizing our bond publicly will either legitimize our evidence or make us targets for elimination, depending on whether forces protecting profitable conflict can silence witnesses before truth spreads beyond their operational control. Nathan's achievement system had reached Level 3, Inadvertent Peace Revolutionary, while offering helpful suggestions about consort recognition ceremonies that apparently involved public testimony, and something called warrior witness integration that sounded either deeply significant or like expensive military relationship counseling with tactical benefits. Through their investigation, they'd uncovered evidence that ceasefire maintenance had been deliberately corrupted to generate ongoing revenue for emergency service providers, while sustainable peace solutions had been blocked through regulatory requirements that served no purpose except maintaining profitable instability that affected thousands of families seeking permanent homes away from conflict zones. I should mention, Nathan admitted through their connection, that accidentally bonding with alien warriors during routine patrols wasn't covered in diplomatic training. My preparation focused more on maintaining ceasefire agreements and facilitating refugee assistance, not on exposing interstellar peace conspiracies through martial partnership ceremonies. Her mental laughter rippled through their shared consciousness like harmonic resonance in perfectly coordinated tactical systems. Military education includes extensive coverage of martial consort traditions, but mostly as ceremonial procedures for planned strategic alliances. No one expected them to activate through genuine human compassion, expressed during humanitarian crisis, involving systematic peace sabotage. The dawn deadline announcement echoed through patrol communications, while thousands of refugees continued depending on evacuation systems that had been corrupted into profit generation mechanisms. And Nathan and Captain Vera faced the choice that would determine whether their accidental martial bond could expose corruption that had turned peace maintenance into systematic exploitation, or whether profitable conflict would continue, while honest ceasefire agreements remained compromised by corporate interests that viewed displaced families as renewable revenue sources. The dawn formalization deadline approached with the weight of peace destiny, painting the patrol zone in emergency lighting that Nathan's exhausted consciousness could only describe as the official color of systematic ceasefire exploitation reaching its moment of humanitarian truth. His caffeine withdrawal had achieved transcendental dimensions, manifesting as what felt like his neurons conducting a diplomatic symposium about the cosmic significance of accidentally bonding with alien warriors through emotional honesty and desperate wishful thinking about ending refugee suffering. Your species' stimulant dependencies, Captain Vera observed through their bond, her mental voice carrying what had become familiar affection mixed with tactical curiosity, create fascinating diplomatic resonance patterns. I'm experiencing sympathetic cravings for something you call emergency negotiation fuel, which sounds either deeply practical or mildly hazardous for long-term strategic function. The morning ceremony convened in the patrol zone's central monitoring station, where representatives from both governments gathered with expressions suggesting they were witnessing either revolutionary peace breakthrough or spectacular interspecies military disaster. Nathan's tactical display had evolved beyond simple device into what could only be described as a digital consciousness, dedicated to exposing ceasefire corruption with the enthusiasm of artificial intelligence that had discovered humanitarian justice. Director Walsh rose with theatrical precision that suggested considerable preparation for this exact confrontation. Esteemed colleagues, we must address the concerning situation involving negotiator Clark, who appears to have fallen victim to sophisticated Vraxian manipulation techniques disguised as traditional martial bonding ceremonies. Alternatively, Captain Vera interjected with warrior ruthlessness that made military destruction look like performance art. We address systematic conspiracy between human emergency contractors and Vraxian security officials to maintain profitable ceasefire exploitation through coordinated peace sabotage and deliberate humanitarian obstruction. The evidence cascaded across the monitoring stations displays systems like digital peace revelation, overwhelming damage control efforts with sheer volume of undeniable proof. Financial records revealed Walsh's logistics division receiving payments coordinated with Kexvoth Security Corporation, all carefully timed around ceasefire violations that maximized emergency service contracts while preventing sustainable peace that would eliminate ongoing revenue streams. The evacuation delays, Nathan explained to the increasingly pale-faced assembly, were artificially maintained through coordinated sabotage and administrative manipulation. Refugee transportation wasn't failing due to logistical challenges, but profit optimization algorithms designed to extend emergency service contracts, while preventing efficient evacuation that would reduce dependency on expensive intervention services. Communication logs showed suspicious coordination between supposed peace competitors, revealing that ceasefire protocols had been deliberately designed to fail at precisely the rate that justified ongoing intervention contracts without triggering complete war that would expose their systematic exploitation. Documentation proved that artificial violations had been created through systematic provocation management, generating humanitarian crises that required expensive emergency responses instead of sustainable peace maintenance systems. Commander Kexvoth's supporters launched their prepared counterattack, claiming human emotional manipulation had compromised Captain Vera through species-specific diplomatic warfare techniques designed to exploit Vraxian martial traditions for peace advantage. Their arguments evaporated like morning mist when evidence revealed Kexvoth's personal financial stakes in continued ceasefire instability, with security contracts that somehow never quite completed their peace improvement projects, requiring endless additional funding cycles that coincidentally aligned with refugee evacuation failures. The assassination attempt unfolded exactly as their shared awareness had predicted, with explosives targeting refugee camps while both human extremists and Vraxian hardliners blamed each other for coordinated attacks designed to restart active hostilities and justify abandoning ceasefire agreements entirely. Nathan and Captain Vera's mental connection allowed them to anticipate and expose the false flag operation in real time, broadcasting intercepted communications that proved both attacks originated from the same conspiracy designed to maintain profitable conflict. Distinguished delegates, Captain Vera announced with crystalline authority that made the monitoring station feel like the peace center of the universe. I invoke the right of martial partnership under consort right law. The evidence we present will be broadcast simultaneously to all government databases, refugee advocacy networks, and public humanitarian information systems across both civilizations. The moment of cosmic choice arrived with gravitational weight that seemed to bend space around their decision. Captain Vera could formalize their bond permanently, binding their lives together while broadcasting proof that will restore honest ceasefire management to the border territories. Or she could renounce their partnership while preserving traditional military protocols that enable continued systematic exploitation disguised as legitimate security concerns. Nathan Clark, she said, her voice carrying across the monitoring station with absolute certainty, your desire to end suffering represents the finest qualities of genuine human compassion. I choose to honor that dedication with permanent commitment and peace justice. I accept the martial partnership, Nathan replied, understanding that his desperate whisper had transformed him from an exhausted negotiator, trying to maintain impossible ceasefire, into someone willing to challenge the institutional corruption that had been systematically sabotaging peace agreements for contractor profit. Let the evidence reach everyone who needs real peace. The quantum broadcast engaged with harmonic resonance that felt like the universe taking a collective sigh of humanitarian relief. Their compiled evidence streamed simultaneously to every accessible database, overwhelming conspiracy damage control with the volume of undeniable documentation. The systematic exploitation died in real time as truth spread faster than any ceasefire spin could contain. Evacuation corridors opened to honest operation within hours as artificial barriers dissolved under public scrutiny. Refugee transportation was restored as delay protocols evaporated once their profit motive disappeared. Humanitarian systems that had been mysteriously inadequate for months suddenly discovered effective assistance when emergency pricing structures collapsed under transparency requirements. Nathan's achievement system reached mission complete, accidentally revolutionized interstellar peace maintenance, while offering congratulations on most diplomatically significant partnership bond in recorded history. The universe's sense of peace justice, he realized, sometimes operated through the most unexpected emotional expressions. 6 months later, Nathan and Captain Vera oversaw the successful closure of the last temporary refugee camp, as all displaced families finally reached permanent settlements in genuinely peaceful territories. Their accidental martial consort bond having become the foundation for new ceasefire protocols that prioritized actual civilian safety over contractor revenue. The exhausted negotiator who'd whispered desperate wishes had been replaced by someone willing to challenge institutional peace manipulation, while their partnership proved that sometimes the most sincere emotional expressions, shared with desperate intention during moments of complete exhaustion, can reshape the landscape of interspecies cooperation and establish new standards for how civilizations maintain peace, without allowing contractors to profit from systematic conflict preservation. "Your emergency negotiation fuel," Captain Vera observed, watching him prepare their morning ritual, "still tastes like liquid determination with delusions of palatability." "But it's our liquid determination," Nathan replied, feeling her mental laughter ripple through their permanent bond like harmonic resonance in perfectly coordinated tactical systems. The cosmos, it seemed, rewarded honest emotional expression in the most unexpected ways.